and see what you have done, Mama. Oh, Mama. Oh, Mama. Who's the one who tied your shoe when you were young and knew just when to come and see what you have done, Mama? Oh, Mama. And
My name is Viola Marie Andersen. I was born May 26, 1919 to Jensen Elizabeth Andersen at St. Lucas Hospital in Faribault. I married Alvin Sellers October 2nd in 1940 in Vancouver, Washington. I had 8 children. Conrad Peter Andersen was born February 18th in 1938 at home in 118 12th Street, Northwest in Faribault. Alvin Henry was born December 12th in 1941 in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Robert Stephen born February 8th, 1943 in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Richard Dale born August 8th in 1945 at St. Lucas Hospital in Faribault. Mary Elizabeth born February 8th, 1948 Northfield Hospital. Jean Marie was born December 22nd, 1953 at Northfield Hospital. Elaine Jessie born October 13th, 1958 at the Northfield Hospital. And Denise Anastasia born August 14th, 1962 also at the Northfield Hospital. I lived in Faribault, right across from McKinley School, where I went to school for, can't remember if I went to kindergarten or not. Sometimes I had it, sometimes I didn't. Anyway, I went to school for my first, second, and third grades there. In my first grade, my teacher was Mrs. Slingerman. My second grade teacher was Mrs. Charles, and my third grade teacher was Val Borg Peterson, which later I went up to visit her in Hibbing, Minnesota, and got some pictures and had a real good time talking to her, and got Christmas cards after that from her. And I went to Sacred Heart School in my 4th and 5th grades. Then I came back and went to McKinley in my 6th grade. Then I went back to Sacred Heart in my 7th and 8th grade, made my confirmation there and graduated there in 1933. Then I went on to high school for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. Graduated in 1937.
Do you remember your graduation commencement at all?
And that was at the high school. And I didn't go to my senior prom. I went to my junior prom.
Do you remember who you went with?
And no, we went stag.
Oh.
My girlfriend, Margaret Walsh, and I. And let's see what else. And at that time, my best friend was Margaret Walsh. And now this is for my family. My brother Harold was born at home.
He was the oldest?
Yeah,
You're the
I'm the oldest.
But you weren't born at home.
No, I was born at St. Lucas. I had one with Harold.
Here, let me see if I can find it over there.
No, it's probably on a different paper.
Yeah, it's right here. It's under Graham Andersen. It has all Harold's on the top part.
Oh. My mother's name was Elizabeth Mabel Duffney. She was Kansas Grandma Andersen. She was born May 16, 1894 to Rosalie and Godfrey Duffney. She married Jens Christian Andersen in 1918, I think, in Mankato. My dad was in the service at that time. They had 5 children. Viola Marie, born 26 May 1919 at St. Lucas Hospital. Harold Robert was born November 19th, 1921, passed away. Paul Dalred was born July 11th, 1922, passed away April 11th, 1980. Dale Richard, born June 7th, 1933 at St. Lucas Hospital, died January 6th, 1993. Rosalie Jean was born July 8th, 1938 at St. Lucas. Grandpa Andersen.
What are you looking for?
Grandpa Andersen.
We didn't get Grandpa Andersen on there.
No, I don't see him.
He isn't in the notes.
Grandma Andersen.
Oh, what's
That's
that
the one
one?
I just did.
Nels Peter? Which one's Grandpa?
Let's see. Yeah, Grandpa Andersen would be Nels Peter. Nice to meet you. Which one am I looking for?
Grandpa Andersen. Jess? Your dad?
Yeah. And I haven't got him in there either, have I?
He's not written down. Is that who you're looking for?
There wasn't much in there about Grandpa.
Let's see. You got that shut off, I hope?
It's still recording.
Eugene Anderson?
1863 in Ohio, to Mr. and Mrs. Jacob Ruslott. She came to Faribault when she was 9 years old. She had one brother, Charles Ruslott, who lived on French Lake. She also had a sister, Mrs. R.M. Gravitt, who lives in Minneapolis. She married Nels Peter Andersen October 3rd, 1885. Nels was from Copenhagen, Denmark. He preceded her in death in 1917. He had two sisters, Mary and Sina. She had 10 children. Charles lived at Fox Lake, George at French Lake, Jens and Albert, both of Faribault, Leroy and Edward, both near Faribault, Raymond of Pueblo, Colorado, Margaret, Mrs. Joe Condon, Marie, Mrs. Allen Swartwood of Dundas, and Nettie, who passed away in 1920. Eugenie passed away at the age of 80, July 31st, 1941, at home at 1014 Central Avenue in Faribault. She is buried in Maple Lawn Cemetery in Faribault. Should I do it? Grandma Daphne? Rosalie Genoa Daphne, great-grandma Daphne.
So this would be your grandma.
That'd be
correct?
my, yeah, it'd be my grandma. She was born February 8th, 1960 in Brussels, Belgium. She and her parents, Mr. and Mrs. P. Genoa, came to Faribault when she was 20 years old. She had two brothers, Elmer and Joe Genoa, and three sisters, Mrs. C.A. Rosette, Mrs. Jerry Carpenter, and Mrs. Clem St. Martin. She married Godfrey Daphne when she was 21 in 1881. She lived on a farm in Wheatland. Now her grandson Leonard Daphne's farm. I'm not for sure if that's the one, because in some of the other deals, they said she lived near Cody Lake, and he lives near Phillips Lake. She had 7 children, Wilford, William, Edward, Leonard is his son, Perrin. Let's see. or not, Rosalie Aurelia, Mrs. David Perrin, Laura, Mrs. Fred Odette, Lena, Mrs. Art Remillard, and Elizabeth, Mrs. Jens Christian Andersen. She also had 3 stepsons, Joe, Jim, and Jettie Duffney. Grandma Duffney lived with her grandma and grandpa at,
She came and lived with our grandma and grandpa, with your mom and
yeah,
dad?
great grandma Duffney lived with grandma and grandpa at 118 North 12th Street in Fairville for 6 years after moving from Wheatland. She passed away October 16, 1920, and is buried in St. Lawrence Cemetery in Fairville with her husband Godfrey, who passed away on May 17, 1917. I didn't know either one of my grandfathers.
So you didn't know your grandma either, because you were only like a year old
Yeah, I
when she died.
wasn't too old when she died. I knew Grandma Andersen.
So you remember your dad's mom?
Yeah, I remember her.
What was
We-
she like?
She lived over on Central Avenue, and I remember when they put the new road through from Northfield to Fairville, and they made a cement road, and I used to go over and sit in front of her place and watch them pave the pavement out in front. And then we would come over to her place, and she had, in the kitchen, she had what they called a salt cellar. And she had this heavy salt in it, and she'd make cabbage salad or something, and she'd put the cabbage heart next to that, and the first one of us kids that came over there got the cabbage heart. And she also had a neat apple tree in the backyard, which we all liked to eat. And she had a little mold on the side of her face, like I had, only hers is bigger. And I always wanted to touch it, but she wouldn't let me. And she had, in the front room, she had a bowl with goldfish in, and she had a great big rubber plant that I can remember there. And then they heated with a furnace, and it had a big opening between the kitchen and living room, I think it was, or dining room or something. And they had a little deal on the wall that you could turn, and it had a couple little chains on both sides, and I used to get over there and move it up, and I'd get my fingers tapped for doing that, because she had it at a certain temperature and she wanted to leave it there. And she had pictures on the walls of her kids when they were growing up. The boys, I think it was Albert and Raymond, and they had long curly hair, and they had it in curls, and they had a big ribbon on the top of their head. In the picture over there. And they had short pants, long stockings, and high shoes. And
I remember seeing that picture.
yeah, you got it, I think.
Yeah.
And let's see. And I remember, I don't remember too much of Grandma Duffney, but I do remember on the kitchen, it was an old kitchen before they got remodeled. And on the windowsill there was a corncob pipe. And I asked my mother at one time, who'd that belong to? And she said it belonged to Grandma Duffney. Grandma Duffney used to smoke a corncob pipe.
Did you really?
That's what she told me. I don't know if anybody else knew about it. And we had, at that time, we had a coal shed. Oh yeah, and we had an outside biffy, they called it. And we had 2 holes, so we were pretty lucky there. And we had the old Sears catalog and, for wiping purposes. And sometimes ours was attached to the shed, to the coal shed and the wood shed. So on Halloween, a lot of times the boys would tip these over, but they couldn't tip ours over because it was attached to the shed. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, I never got to go to a birthday party, but I was over to Grandma Andersen's one time, and my brother Harold went to one that a little boy around the corner from Grandma's was at, and his name was Kaiser. Right, I think it was Brian Kaiser. And I stuck around out there till I got invited in for some cake and ice cream, and I think that was the only birthday party I ever went to. I think my brother was kind of upset with me, but anyway, I got the cake and ice cream. Let's see, what else is there? Let's see, Mary Elizabeth, should I do this? Mary Elizabeth Parsons McCollum.
Okay, and who's that?
That's Grandma Sellers' mother.
Okay, so this is Dad's grandma.
Yeah, this would be Dad's grandma. She was born to Thomas and Lucy Parsons, November 27, 1866 in Pennsylvania. She was a Pennsylvania one. I never realized that. She moved to Worthington when she was 4 years old, and she grew up and attended school there. She had two brothers, Sidney and Bernard Parsons. I met Sidney, and I had a picture of Sidney and his wife. And I never met Bernard. She had four sisters, Mrs. Grace Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I wondered,
P-
Pfeiffer, just like Lisa's husband.
Yeah.
No, that's Fleeger.
Oh, it's Fleeger.
Oh.
Never mind.
This is Pfiefffer. And Mabel
Maybe it's
Rochette.
related to the beer.
Mabel Rochette, Emily, Mrs. Hazel Paulson, Lewis, and Mrs. Rena McKittrey, all of Minneapolis. I met that Mrs. McKittrey. She came down to see me, and I think I lived here. And she married Henry McCollum on November 22nd, 1881. They lived in Worthington several years before moving to Minneapolis, and then lived on a farm in Millisburg. Henry died in 1925. She later moved to Dundas. She lived in Rice County for 60 years. She founded and taught Sunday school at St. John's Church near Millisburg. She joined the Methodist Church in Dundas, and she started school there too for
Sunday school?
Sunday school. And she taught, what's her name? The Sellers girl at
Marilyn?
Marilyn and Ruth Ann Sellers. She taught them there at Sunday school. And they sang in kind of a choir there, I think. She had 7 children. Ines L. Dorrance of Sheldon, North Dakota. Mary, Mrs. Herman Fechner of Minneapolis. They had a, what was it there? They had where they had flowers and
A greenhouse?
a greenhouse. And that's the first time I ever saw one of those flowers there. What do they call them?
Bird to Paradise?
Bird of Paradise, yeah. And Florence, that's Mrs. David Andersen. That was Jesse's sister, and she later adopted Jesse's son, Robert.
Yeah, you've got that noted in here.
And
Uncle Bob, but we didn't know we had.
yeah, and then Jesse, Mrs. Elmer Carl Sellers, Northfield. Eva, Mrs. George Jacobs of Dundas. Arthur Charles of both of St. Paul. I can't remember if it was Arthur or George. One of them worked on the railroad, and I've been up there several times. George of Worthington. Later he moved to Northfield. And Clarence of Mason City, Iowa. And born, let's see, Alvin Henry Sellers. He was born November 6, 1917, to George and Jesse McCollum Sellers in Rice County. He had 3 brothers, Floyd, Robert, and Robert was later adopted by her sister Florence, Mrs. David Andersen.
So was he Grandpa's son?
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Do you know why they adopted him out?
no, at Bob's wedding, I think it was, somebody asked Florence if Bob was Jess's son, and Florence says yes, but I wouldn't thank her for it. And I thought that was awful. I heard this through the grapevine, and I think Jess felt pretty bad about it. But she didn't want to adopt him out, but after her and George were divorced, she just couldn't take care of all three of them, and she worked in this, at the, what they called it, I don't know if it was the blind school. I think it was, they called it the feeble-minded school in Faribault. She worked there, and she took care of them. And then Florence didn't have any children, so she adopted him and another girl from someone else.
So Grandpa George left Grandma,
Yeah.
and did he, I thought he took Floyd with him when he, did he go join the circus or
he
something?
did. When he first left, he took Floyd with him, and they joined the circus. And then he brought Floyd back again, and then Jess took care of Alvin and Floyd, and then she married Carl, or Elmer, after he came back from the World War I.
No, Grandpa Ruth Elmer?
Yeah.
Or a different Elmer?
No,
No,
the
no.
one that was married to,
So Grandpa, I didn't know he was married to Grandma Jessie at one time.
yes,
Yeah,
he
And
saw,
then Grandma
that's where-
Jessie died and he married Ruth?
yeah,
yeah, but
But
that's where
Ruth-
we got Jerry and Uncle Salty, was from Elmer
with,
and
yeah,
Jesse.
yeah.
So Jerry and Dad don't have the same dad?
No, they're
No.
half brothers.
I
half
didn't
sisters.
know that.
Yeah,
Really? I thought all this time you knew that.
He had-
No.
he had three brothers: Floyd, Elmer, Sidney, Robert Sellers Anderson, adopted by Jesse's sister Florence McCollum Anderson. He
No,
died.
Bob died, right?
Huh?
Bob died.
Yeah.
Bob had the three-legged dog.
No, that was
Oh,
Bob
that's McCollum.
Collins.
Oh.
He died April 9th, 1977, and is buried in Fort Snelling Cemetery. Let's see. Floyd's son, Ken, was born August 31st, 1950, and he died May 10th, 1999.
And yes,
Patty,
Floyd also has Ted, yeah.
Pat, and she married
Right.
Patty,
Oddie.
Oddie, Wally,
Wally.
Wally Oddie. And they have 2 daughters. Yeah,
They live over in Goodhue.
they live in, yeah, Goodhue County.
So what's the scoop on Elmer then? I thought he was supposed to have been adopted or something, but he was really illegitimate or something?
Well, as I heard it at one time, that Grandma was, was married to, was it a Schroeder or something like that? And that was Elmer's dad, as I understood it. I'm not for sure on that. But,
Which grandma?
Grandma Emma,
Grandma Emma. Is Elmer.
that's Pete's. Pete, Pete Sellers, that would have been George's brother.
Okay.
Al's dad's brother, Pete, and she married, let's see, how did I go? That was one of, that's what the Sellers girl has got all that information that I sent out,
Okay.
so that's that for now until I can find some more information.
And then was she the Parsons? Did she take an American or a regular name? Because it was just like a no-no to be married to an Indian back then?
No,
That gum is really hard. I can't have any of my teeth.
I don't know, I have to talk to Collins, and I don't know if he
Bob's got Alzheimer's.
and he wouldn't remember that.
You know, Junior said that the one that was Indian lived up by where Ricky lives now.
Yeah, there was one out there, and Paul Sellers is telling me about that. I don't know if his wife would remember or not. Bernice, or Bernice. I can't remember which one. If it was, that was Ezra, and she was married to a Schrader. And I met, have you got that turned on?
Mm-hmm.
I met Alvin one time, Dorothy came down and
Dorothy.
Dorothy McCorkle, and that was before, no, that was after she was married to Bud Weed, I think. I think she was probably divorced from Bud and married to Bud McCorkle. And they wanted me to go out with them, and I couldn't go. And then later, I can't remember where. The first time I remember going with them was out to.
Why couldn't you go with them?
I don't know, Mom. They stopped over in front of our house and they were talking. I had to do something else, and I can't remember what it was. And so,
Were you still in high school when you met Dad? Or were you out of high school?
I was still in high school. Oh, no, was it right after I graduated? Probably right after I graduated. It was, yeah. And she came down and we couldn't go, but then I met her someplace else after that, and we went out to the dance out at, it was a little dance hall out on the other side of Fairville. Gingham Inn, I think they called it, the Gingham Inn. And I started going with him then, and then he, back and forth, and I didn't go real steady with him, and then later I went with him, and then he went back into the service. He had been in the service before. Then he went into the service, and then we kept corresponding, and then he came home on leave, and we with Floyd and Marie, and went down to Arboretum and had some pictures taken on that swinging bridge down there, but that isn't there anymore. Yeah,
Yeah, the bridges
with
are
Marie and I and Al
See
was
the pictures.
taken
Wow.
on that, yeah. And then he went back and then asked me to come out, so I left the first part of July with one of the other girls was going out to meet her boyfriend, and Al was in Fort, Washington, Vancouver Barracks, Washington, and this other girl's boyfriend was up in Fort Camp Robert, no, Fort, what was it? It was Fort Lewis. And so we rode the train all the way out to, when we first came into Washington, and she had to get off the train to go to Fort Lewis, and then I went around to Vancouver and worked for, well, Al told me that it was Major Salzman, but he wasn't a major yet, he was just a captain. I got caught calling him major one time, and I got corrected on it. And I got caught talking to Mrs. Salzman, and I called her Grace because that was her name. And then I got called on that too, because in the service you didn't call them by their first names, you called them by Mrs. And whatever their proper name was.
Oh, they didn't have their own identities then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and of course, and Al, I was a maid, and I remember polishing silver out there one day, and I was polishing away on it. The major says, use a little more elbow grease. And so I polished a little harder, and he said, you know, I had someone working for me one time, and I told them to do that, and they asked me where I kept it. The major was a pretty good cook. I said, I made goulash, and I thought that was great, but they didn't care for it. So after that, the major started cooking.
And you and Dad weren't married at that point?
No, we got married, and I was out there the first part of July, August. And we applied for, we had to wait for 2 or 3 months, and so we applied for a marriage license, and then the first of the second.
But the major didn't know, or the captain didn't know you weren't married?
No, they didn't know that.
They assumed
But they
you
knew,
were married.
yeah, they knew I had butch. And I said he was home with my mother, which he was.
And how old was Butch at that time, too? Oh yeah, he must have been, too. He was born in February,
And
38.
38, yeah, and this was 40.
So he was 2.
And so, well then, they, when was it, in 40, 30, 30, 40. And 41, oh, Jim was born in 41, so it couldn't have been. The latter part of 40, the major captain went to Fort Benning, Georgia to get his major promotion there, and they were shipped up to Fort Lewis, Washington, and they had Alvin stay behind, and they put him on, what was it, duty for, I can't remember what that was. It was guard, like a guard. And so him and Mrs. Salzman sat in the front seat, and I and the dog, Fury, sat in the back seat, and we drove to Fort Lewis, Washington, and we lived right above the river, or we drove to Olympia. It was right above, and Olympia was the capital, and we lived up above the river. I can't remember the river.
Is that where you were married?
We were married, yeah, we were married, no, we were married in Vancouver on the 2nd of October, and in the priest's house. And there happened to be a couple that used to live in Minnesota that stood up for us. Oh. And then we went to Portland, Oregon on our honeymoon overnight in the hotel. And then we moved up to, well, we went to, what's the name of that place? They had bathing suits by the same name, Jansen Beach. We used to go down there and go on picnics and stuff down there. And then went over to Portland, and my Aunt Josephine's sister lived over there, and she was married to a Peterson that was a neighbor of ours when I lived in Faribault. And we used to go to her place a lot. And then we went up to Fort Lewis, went to Olympia. We lived right next door to a doctor, and I went to him and had my tonsils out and spit up in the sink, and he said to me they had to get the plumber, and I was the only one that ever plugged up his sink. And he said, I tell you one thing, girl, you'll never bleed to death because your blood coagulates so fast. And then while we were there, we went to a dance and met Duke Ellington and Ivy Andersen. There's another guy there that played in the band. And we sat next to the band on the table there, and during the intermission they came over and talked to us. And Ivy and this other guy said, you know, when we go down and play in the southern part of the States, we can't eat with the rest of people. We have to go out in the kitchen and eat, because they were black, you know. And so and then I got Duke Ellington signed his name on the back of one of Al's things that he had to give out to. They had to have passes, and he had signed his name on that, and I still have it.
Oh, do you really?
Mary's eyeing it, but she ain't getting it.
You hear that, Mary? It's mine.
I'm taking it with me.
Well, that's neat.
Oh, that's wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember some of the names of the songs, but
Did you and Dad dance then?
oh yeah, we danced. Some of the other guys went with us. That was in the service too.
Is that what's called now swing dance?
Probably was. And what was it? some other things there that I wanted to say, but I can't remember them. Then Al was transferred to Camp Roberts, California, and I went down by bus there. And when I got there, we lived with it's Helen Hunt was her name. We lived in a little place there. There was 2 different families living there, and we had a bedroom and a kitchen and shared a bath with another couple. And we moved to, they had, can't remember who that was. I've got it some of my books where it's something to do with it was the 4th of July or something, and they had a big deal out at Camp Roberts, and they had some people from Hollywood that was out there, but I can't remember the names of those guys. I've got them in one of my books that I got, scrapbooks. And then Al was transferred to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and so I came home first then, and I stayed with my parents and with Al's parents, and then on the first part of, I stayed with Jess and Elmer, and first part of December, I was going to go and join Al at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and Al's mother, Jessie, said, "You go up to the doctor's office and see if it's safe for you to travel at this time." So I went up, and he told me if he was my wife, he wouldn't be traveling. I come home, "Oh yeah, it's okay to go."
I'm assuming you were pregnant.
Yes.
Junior. Well,
Yeah,
he
with
was born
Junior.
the 12th.
Yeah, this was 1st of December, and I went down by train, and Al met me, and we got this little, it was 2 rooms up over a Negro undertaking parlor. With this, the man and his daughter, I think his wife had passed away, and they said, "Well, anytime you need to use the phone," we didn't have a phone, "you come down and use it. Don't make any time of the night or anything." And so we were there, but let's see, it was on, I think, the 7th or the 8th of December, I can't remember. And I was going out to the post, to the Army hospital, to be examined. And so when we went by a little bus that used to take us out, and there was all kinds of people that would go out there. When we got to the beginning of the post out there, they stopped the bus and took everybody off that didn't have any business out there, and they told about being bombed over in Hawaii. And after that, I had to get a passport to go out there. I had a picture passport to go to the out there. Anyway, I got to go and come back again. And Junior was born out there. Al took me out, and I don't know, he must have bought, no, we went, I can't remember if we went out by bus or if he took me out in somebody's car or something. Anyway, Junior was born in December 12th, 1941. And I remember they brought me some oyster stew, and I hated this stuff. I had the stew part, and I gave the oysters to another one of our friends that was in the hospital having a baby. She enjoyed it. She was from down in New York or Pennsylvania or someplace down there. And then we moved, after he was a few months old, we moved to another place that we had. It was on the 2nd floor. Brick building. I had some pictures of that one too. Not far from the fire and rescue deal down there. Then in 1940, February was 8th, Bobby was born at the hospital there. But before that, I had gone out by ambulance because I had some back pains and thought I was expecting, so I went out there. But it was just that I'd eaten something the night before and it didn't agree with me, so I came back home again. And then
along with from back labor, right?
yeah, and then went out there, and I had the same doctor that I had for Junior, and he says, "You give her some pills or something." He says, "Junior didn't get any when Junior was born because they didn't think he was going to be born until the next day." And so they told Al to go on downtown and have a few beers, and he was down there.
That's all Dad needed was encouragement from the doctors.
Yeah. So he went down, and then they had to call him and tell him that, well, somehow they got a hold of him and told him that Junior was born. But I didn't see him till the next day. And then when Bobby was born, I think it was Bobby, or maybe it was Junior, I can't remember. The nurses came in and brought him in, and he smelled like he'd been down to the beer joint. And the nurse says, "Oh, him and I were out last night, and they had a few, and they did, he had what did Jewish people have when they he had been circumcised, and they gave him they called it a sugar tip with alcohol in it, so they put that in his mouth while he did the job." But I can't remember.
Painkillers.
Yeah, painkillers. And then Junior, I think, Eva, let's see. No, Jess and Elmer came down and got Junior and took him back a little while after Bobby was born, and took him back to here, back to Northfield with him for a month or so, and then Eva brought him back. She came back on the train, I think, and she brought him back to us.
Oh, that's why Junior was always Eva's favorite.
Yeah. And let's see what else. Well, and then we moved back. Al got transferred to Charleston, South Carolina, and we moved back, and Elmer and Jess came down with their little, I think it was a 36 Ford or something, and we had the potty chair right up on top of the roof of the car. It was wide open, coming all the way home. And we took sandwiches along and stopped along the way and had our little deals to eat. Then got back and I stayed with Jess and Elmer for a while, and then they worked at the Malto-Mill plant for a month or so and made enough money to go down to Charleston, South Carolina to see Al. And on the bus, on the train, there was a lot of servicemen on there. People were walking by and they wouldn't get it. Some of the servicemen were taking 2 seats like that, you know. Well, nothing came by, and I got to talk to him, and I said I was going down to see Al, and that one got up and put his feet down and let me sit down.
Because you were
Serviceman's wife, you know. And we went through some of the back country, and so many little kids would come running out of these kind of shacks, you know. That you didn't think there'd be that many people in them, but they lived, I don't know. Anyhow, I got down there, we stayed in, it was an old kind of a mansion. We had 1 room, and I got to go out to, I went swimming out there at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I got to go swimming there and came back. Went downtown one time to have coffee and saw him bringing the water back to make the coffee. It was kind of oily, and didn't care too much for that. And then the streets were so narrow, you could smell that gas from them. And I said, I'm not going to bring my family down here. Besides, they didn't like us damn Yankees anyway. And so then I stayed back here with Jess in Elmer for a while. Then I moved to Faribault, just about 3-4 blocks from where my folks lived. It was just a half a block from St. Lawrence Church. And they had a living room and a kitchen and shared the bathroom upstairs. And that's where Rick was born. And I didn't have a telephone, but the people living next to me had one. So I had to wake them up in the morning. At that time, my folks had a telephone. After my sister was born, they got a telephone. They never had one before. And so I went in and used the phone and called my folks. And then I started walking down, and Paul came along and then took me up to the hospital. And I had Rick, and he was born August 8th, 1945 at St. Lucas Hospital. And then there was Junior and Bobby and I and Rick. And we lived there till Al came home from the service. Well, Al went over to the Philippines then, and he was in the service over there. Floyd was in the service over there too. And then he came home and let's see, he was 45, I think it was. He was born in August. Al came home, I think it was October, sometime. It wasn't too long after Rick was born. And he worked. They had a bunch of the guys got together and put in $100 and started a shop down there where they made things out of wood. The Faribault, well, they have it out on Highway on 21 now. The Faribault Manufacturing Company they have. But they had that one downtown to start out with. It was upstairs. And Al's brother Bob worked up there with them. And some of the kids I went to school with. And then he got a job at Carleton College and at the gymnasium. And we moved to Northfield, and we lived in the south end of the stadium. And Earl Baldwin and his family lived in the north end, and Earl took care of the field there where they played football and all that. And then they had a place they called Pine Hill, but there wasn't any room for us up there for a while, so we lived there. And while we were there, Ricky got burnt, fell out of bed and got burnt on a, what do you call it? A heater, yeah, a register. And the doctors made house calls in those times, so he came over and fixed Rick, and I think it was his fingers or the leg or something, I can't remember what it was. And while we lived there, it was in the winter time, and the ice was frozen over. It was right next to the river, and I looked out the window, and I happened to be, at that time, two of the hall boys were there, Richard and Roger, and Al had just had some teeth pulled, and he couldn't go out, or he had a dry socket or something. And I looked out the window, and I saw this lady over there, and she was scrabbling around in the water. And so I told them, Al and them, and the guys ran out, and they said that, she said her son had drowned in there. He was in the water. And so then I called Earl Baldwin, and he got one of these great big long sticks that we used to open the windows with in the schools, and then he opened them in there. And he took that, and he went down, and the two hall boys went down. Al couldn't do anything about it because of his, but then they finally worked their way down some open water, and Earl or somebody Oh, I called the fire department too, but that was before they had the rescue, or well, they had whatever they could do with it. But they didn't have, at that time, have the same thing that Ricky had gone to. And so they got him out of there and brought him downstairs, and I'd sent some blankets down to put around him. And then his mother lived over in the tourist park over there. And she was over there, and Earl used to say after that, every time he'd see one of our kids down there, he'd think of this little boy that he pulled out of the water.
So the little boy died?
Yeah, he was dead. Yeah. And I think they were originally from Medford. And his dad, I think, drove over the roads in trucks and stuff. I can't remember what his name was. And then we moved up to Pine Hill. And Mary was born up there. And when was she born?
February
February
10th,
10th, yeah. And
1912.
She's the old one.
1948.
Good thing she's cute though, huh?
1948, and I got to ride up in the police car with Lamb, what was his name? His wife was in the hospital anyway, and he was on the police force. He gave me a ride up there, and I got in the hospital, and I was talking to her, and she said, I had to take a cab up, and you got to ride in the police car. Oh, what was he?
I got it.
Frentenberg's?
Oh yeah, she was mad because you got to take
Yeah.
cop car and she had to take a cab.
Yeah, and it wasn't Ernie Frentenberg, it was his brother. And his wife was in the hospital, and she had a baby girl, I guess, and she said, you got to ride up in the police car, and I had to take a cab. Anyway, then we lived up at Pine Hill, and Mary was little, and was the baby there, and that's when I met George. First time I met George, and that was Al's dad. And he came in from, where was it? It was
Arizona?
Arizona, yeah. He lived out in Arizona. He came up, and I think he gave, I thought he gave the boys each a silver dollar, and he gave one of them a silver dollar. And Jess happened to hear that he was there, so she comes up to see Mary, so she got to see him too. And
Did he ever remarry? Did Grandpa ever remarry?
not that I know of, but he had a friend out there. And he later died out there, and he was buried not in a military cemetery, but Floyd got wind of it, and Floyd had him moved into a military cemetery, I think.
Yes, dug up and moved.
Yeah, because that's where he was supposed to be. He was in the service too,
Oh, I suppose that's...
and he should have been in there.
So Grandpa's buried in Arizona?
Yeah, someplace in Arizona. He wasn't in Arizona when he died. He was someplace else, but I can't remember where it was. But,
Oklahoma?
no.
I don't know why I could think of
It's someplace out there, not too far from there. And let's see. And then Al decided he was going back in the service again. So he went back in the service, and I moved down with Jess and Elmer for a little while. And then I moved up and back of Floyd and Marie's. And that's where, is that where Jeannie was born? Yeah, that's where Jeannie was born, and she was born
December 22nd.
December 22nd, 1953, at the Northfield Hospital. And we lived there for, Al went out to, he flew out with Malcolm Manuel, because when he come home he was taking flying lessons, and that was a cross-country deal, so Mal flew him out there to someplace in Washington, and Alice was out there, and that's Dennis's mother. And they,
Well, they had Dennis by then.
yeah,
She had Dennis.
yeah. And so he got to see them and take pictures and be with them for a while. And
That's
then,
probably when Dennis has the picture of
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dennis has a picture of him.
yeah, and then, let's see. Oh, he was going to go back to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, because I thought, well, that'd be a nice place to be, you know. And he decided that he didn't want to be in the service anymore or something. And he got out. I can't remember. I know he had some surgery when he was in the service, but I can't remember if that's when he had it. He got a medical discharge anyway. And he came back here, and we lived in up there on Linden Street for a while, and then we moved down to Water Street, and Denise and Elaine, yeah, you were born down there on October 13th, 1957.
57.
And, let's see, we lived there, and then I started working for at Young's Dining Room for Mr. Road, and worked there for a while. And Al was in and out of the hospital with his feet, and I don't remember if that's when he started working for Dale Young, painting. His mother died when we were down there, because I remember he got the refrigerator, no, what do they call it?
Icebox? Freezer?
Freezer, yeah, he got the freezer, and we couldn't get that in the house. We just got it on the front porch, and didn't stay there too long. It just stayed there long enough for us to use up all the meat and stuff that was in it. Then Al decided he was going to sell it to somebody because he wanted to go fishing. So he sold it to somebody. I can't remember who it was. He went fishing. Fishing. And let's see, Denny Hamlin lived next door, and his mother. And Mr. Hall moved upstairs, and he was married to,
Frank?
yeah, he was married to one of Elmer's sisters, or some of their relation. I can't remember who it was. And he passed away from up there, but I never did get any of the pictures that he had had. And, so we moved from there up to 4th Street, 414 4th Street, across from Schilling's. And the Hansons lived across from me, and the Halversons lived over there. And Grandma Johnston, Jewel's mother, lived on the other side of me. And there's the ones up there with the race car. Williams lived up there with the race cars.
That's when Lucy was born.
And Macy was born in 1962, August 14th, at the Northfield Hospital. And we lived there until Al died, and then the kids had sale down there and sold a bunch of stuff, and I moved up at number 44 Pine Hill. No, 44 Viking Terrace. I got out of Pine Hill, moved to a different one. And I'm still living there. And I've enjoyed my family, and Junior lives in Nearstrand, Butch lives in Rochester, and Mary lives in Faribault, and the rest of the kids live here, around here. Ricky lives out on County Road, Cannon City Boulevard, or whatever it is. Bobby lives out on the Ken Folks' farm. Lucy, Elaine, Jeannie, all live in Northfield. Did I leave anybody out? Rosalie still lives in California. Dennis lives in California. And as I always told the kids, when I go, I want them to say this little ditty for me.
Oh, no, we're
Always
not.
Mary, never glum. She chews her daily gum. And
That one's big.
that was what I had in my school book when I graduated. The other one was, what was that? That one I really wanted to say.
We won't say.
Let's be happy, let's be gay, let's be glad she passed away. And
See,
then
Mother, we won't say that.
from then on, take care of your family. Bury me up there with Al. I get top billing.
Fine
And
way
come up
of-
there for Christmas, put a wreath on the grave, and just be happy. Take care of your family. Visit me once a year when you put the wreath on the grave.
And who has to do that? It must be Ricky, right?
Mary.
Ricky and Mary have to do
You
that.
can take turns. Of course, Elaine don't drive. Unless she learns by then. Let's see.
So which one of the boys walked by themselves? Real young.
Oh yeah, well we were down when I brought Ricky. When I brought Ricky home from the hospital, we lived with Jess, and she had a bedroom downstairs, and I had him in the other room, and then they had a Davenport out in the living room, or the living room, I guess it was. I was out in the kitchen working, and I came back in. Here was Ricky laying on the Davenport, and I said, my God, how did he get out there? There wasn't anybody in there but Junior. Junior says, I don't know, he must have walked. Looked at me with those big eyes. I don't know, he must have walked.
And I hear Dad did a bit of flying with you at some point, and you took Ricky along with you?
Oh yeah, Al, when he came home from the service, he took lessons out at the airport out at Stanton Airport, and I went up with him once, and I took Ricky along. We had Ralphie Manuel's harness, and I put it on because these were open cockpit planes, and he was flying all around, and I didn't want him to do any loopity-loops, so I took him up, and we flew over Lake Billsby and around, and it was really nice. He didn't do any loopity-loopies. Bud McCorkle was one of the instructors out there, and he used to pick Al up and take him out. And we lived on Pine Hill at that time, and in the wintertime they come in on skis, and he rode out with Bud, and then Bud would come up sometimes and bring him in and land with the skis on the back and on some of the open fields back there. Then I think he did fly with pontoons once and landed on the Lake Billsby, I think, but I'm not for sure. And he used to go hunting with Bud McCorkle and Manuel. They go fox hunting in the plane, and they'd see the fox, and they'd land the plane and shoot. I don't know if they ever got any fox or not, but I didn't see any. But that was one of the things. So, and I moved up here to 44 Viking, and a year or two ago, my friend Dorothy Christensen McCorkle moved up here, and we have our get-togethers, our class of 37 get-togethers down at Wimpy's every second Monday of the month. So Dorothy and I get to go down there. And she drives, of course, because I don't. And we go around garage sailing and going different places. And she's still driving, so. And I have a print, the only colored print that was made of a Jesse James deal, and Dorothy's son, Chuck Weed, made it. And I kept after Dorothy to get me one of those prints, and she said, oh yeah, I forgot to ask him, because Chuck didn't live here. And I kept at her, and then one Christmas, she came over and brought me this print, and Mary had it framed, and it cost over $100 to have it framed. And I have it hanging in the back bedroom, Niecy's room. And I'm enjoying my grandkids and great-grandkids. Enjoyed Jessica and her swimming, and Jeremy and his hockey, and Scott and Jeremy and their footballs, and I still can see Floyd always wanted to go to see the kids play football, and he was sick, and it was on Thanksgiving that Bobby had Junior or Bobby had stopped over to see him, and that's the day he went to the hospital. I think he passed away. Anyway, we went, the kids had a game up at the city's.
Prep ball.
The what?
Prep ball.
The prep ball. And we were behind, who did we play? I can't remember. Detroit Lakes. Anyway, we were way down there, and Detroit Lakes was about ready to make another touchdown, and I said to Floyd, do something, Floyd. I says, we're way behind, and about that time, Scott picked up the ball and scooted all the way down the field. Wow, was that something? I really enjoyed that. And I kept going, go Scott, go Scott. Of course, it was always teamwork in all those football games. And that, I think, was one of the longest runs that was ever made up there, wasn't it?
Until this year.
Until this year.
88-yard fumble recovery.
Yeah.
Now there's a 90-yard.
And his was 88 yards. And I still enjoy him. I still got one of his books here because he went in the service. I mean, he went in the college, and then not service, into college. And and Jeremy didn't, well, I didn't get a book out for him, but he didn't stay in college very long. And so I still got a book for him in there. It's getting kind of yellow. And I've made books of both Scott and Jeremy. I think we had a get-together down at the VFW on Christmas Eve one year when we roasted both of them.
Yeah, Bobby did a fine job.
Bobby did a real good job in there, and I gave them both. Both of them had 3 scrapbooks, and I gave Jessica hers, and I gave Bobby his. I gave Bobby his not too long ago. I gave Ricky his because of the diving and all that stuff, let's see. And I enjoyed Mary's kids in their football play, or their whatever, baseball I think it was that they played. And then they're singing, and Ben playing the horn. Oh yeah, and Mike played taps for Al and for Harold, I think. Yeah. And that was really nice. And all my sons-in-laws and sons, when they get around to it, come up and help me fix up the place, and I'm still living. I sit here, and he says, I'll leave her till the roof caves in or the floor goes out. Or the good Lord wants me up there, but it takes me so long to say my prayers all the time. I think he'll leave me around for a while. Because I got to light candles and things for people and pray for them. And outside of that, I'm still running around, having fun. Don't drive, don't drink.
You always told us Dad did enough of that for both of us.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember going up to the cemetery one time, and the kids brought a bottle of
Old log cabin.
all log
I did
cabin.
that. Dumped her right on there. I did.
Dumped it on the grave, and I always
Now there's a dead spot there.
yeah. And it ain't
Grass
out.
won't grow.
And he always tried to drink Canada Dry, but he never made it.
Mother's finally getting the last word.
Yeah. And I'm getting top billing. So, until we meet again,
Done? Okay.
I'm done. See ya. And as a little afterthought, I happened to think about our insignias that we have down to the VFW. During the war, wherever we went, I had a razor blade with me, and we would buy these guys a drink and go over and cut the little insignia off of their shoulder. And then they had the metal ones too. That would take 2 drinks. And we got those, and wherever we went around, and that's where we collected all our insignias from wherever we started out all through. And the first place they went was downtown, I think it was Milkproof Fall, or somebody had a place down there. And Mr. Jacobson up here made a showcase for him, and he used the curtain off of the Grand Theater that they were dismantling at that time. It was maroon, and they had that on the back. And we had on one side it was the metal ones, and on the other side it was the ones from the cloth ones. And then Al had it over at Cannon Falls at one time too, in the VFW hall over there. And then we had it, I think it was in Faribault at the VFW hall there. And then we brought it down here, and it's at the VFW hall now. I gave it to Rick because he was in the service, and so he has it down there, and he's going to, it's been up down there, and there is another person that has a whole lot more of the ones from the sleeves, but he doesn't have any of the middle ones, and the middle ones are what's important. We have one that has can do on it. I think it was something from China or Japan, and it's a little metal one. And then we have the ones from my brother Paul was in the one with the cactus on it. And I think it was the 101st or 103rd down in Texas, and that's where my dad was in the service down there, but he never got overseas. The war was declared over before he got overseas. And so now it's at the VFW, and whatever they're going to do with it, I don't know. They're supposed to put something on there, but we aren't donating it to them. It's just there. It'll probably be there the rest of everybody's life. But at one time I had a deal that told about the different insignias and what they were. But I think I gave it to Rick, or it got lost in our traveling or whatever. So I don't have it anymore. So that's one of the memories that I have.
I never knew where those came from.
Huh?
So